Good morning, big dogs. How we doing? We're talking wide receiver rankings today, all right? The top 40 of them with tiers broken down, half PPR. We did the same exact thing for running backs yesterday, so you can go watch that big girl afterwards, all right? Today, we're going to start with three players in tier number one. That will be Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've officially made the move, all right? Amon-Ra has jumped the next tier of, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. We'll get there in a second. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people are going to go back and forth about who's the one here. I've seen CeeDee Lamb for the most part as the consensus number one. Tyreek's gone back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. I think if things broke right for him, we would have been looking at a 2,000-yard season out of the Dolphin. I just think they continue not to add pass catchers of consequence to that offense. All right. So Tyreek Hill, neither of these guys are going to lose you your league. If you want to take either of them at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter. They're both going to be phenomenal for you. I really don't think it's a discussion worth having, to be honest. CeeDee Lamb was phenomenal down the stretch last year. There wasn't a single better player in fantasy football, but Tyreek Hill has been phenomenal for the last 2 years, as has Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I also think could have had a bigger year last year, despite going for 1,500 yards, despite going for double-digit touchdowns. The man only had 5 end zone targets, okay? That is an extremely low number. That was, I think, 47th amongst wide receivers. So if you watch the receiver documentary on Netflix, Amon-Ra also played a lot of last year with just a fully torn oblique. The man was going through it last year and still went crazy, okay? This kid has been getting better and better and better and better every single year, and I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. So when you look at Chase, when you look at Jefferson, which will be my next tier, we'll just kind of jump into tier number 2. You have Chase, you have Jefferson, you have A.J. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I am just supremely confident that this man, it not only, you have the floor of being in probably a top 3 offense in the entire NFL. They have the number 1 offensive line. They have Laporta, Gibbs, and David Montgomery, but they don't have any real competition at wide receiver, where Tyreek Hill has Waddle and Jamar Chase has T. Higgins. A.J. Brown has Devontae Smith. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I almost feel like he has a floor of 110 catches. So in PPR leagues, there's no reason why he shouldn't be in the top tier. So Amon-Ra, I've made the move to put him at number 3 because I feel as confident in him as just about any player in all of fantasy football. Chase, obviously, with Burrow, love to see the full season where they're both healthy, as explosive as a player as you're going to find in Cincinnati. I will also say one thing that I don't think is really talked about enough is the departure of Joe Mixon makes me feel like they might just be a more pass-heavy offense this year. They might be more of a pass-first, neutral game script, not feeding Joe Mixon the ball type beat where they pass the ball a lot more. And obviously that will benefit Jamar Chase. Tyler Boyd, sneaky, not on the team anymore either. Followed Brian Callahan, the OC, over to Tennessee. So I think Chase has some sneaky upside built in, which is the way the offense might operate this year. Now, Justin Jefferson at 5 is one of the more difficult conundrums in fantasy to really paint the picture of, because we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. They drafted J.J. McCarthy early in the first round. It doesn't sound like he's going to start right away. It'll be Sam Darnold. And while people act like Sam Darnold is like Joe Burrow for some reason, he can sling the ball. He will be able to operate an offense. I just have hesitations about whether or not this offense will be any good. They're in a really tough division. I will say, though, over the last week or so, when you look at the Vikings passing offense, TJ Hawkinson is going to be returning from a very late season ACL tear. I would probably side with him starting the year on the PUP. We'll probably see his first real action in October. Jordan Addison is likely going to get suspended by the team. 2-3 games. We might have a month of the season where Justin Jefferson sees 20 targets a game, okay? That might be enough to jump over Jamar Chase. That might be enough to jump him into tier number 1, despite the quarterback situation and not being certain about what it is. If Addison and Hawkinson are not on the field for multiple weeks, Justin Jefferson is going to see 500 targets a game. It's going to be fucking insane. It's going to be awesome. If I'm a Vikings fan, I'm psyched for those first few weeks, okay? So Justin Jefferson, I'm not going to overthink it, right? Everyone can cite what he did with Mullins last year and what he did with backup quarterbacks, and I think that's valid because Justin Jefferson is just one of the better specimens we've ever seen play football in the history of planet Earth. A.J. Brown, same thing. I like the fact that Kellen Moore is coming over as their OC. Kellen Moore has a 4-year sample size of being an offense coordinator, and his teams annually rank in the top 5, top 8 of number of plays per game, pace, and pass attempts per game. So love that Philly's going to be getting more of an up-tempo offense with the type of athletes they have on this team. We moved to tier 3. We got Garrett Wilson and Puka. And I know a lot of people, like, especially if you're just getting back into fantasy and you're seeing Puka all the way at wide receiver 8 as like a borderline first-round pick, this is probably going to blow your mind a little bit. But the fact of the matter is that he just broke the fuck out everywhere last year. If he didn't get drafted late in the NFL draft, no one would be even questioning this. But he broke all the records, the yardage, the receptions, what he was doing on a week-to-week basis. I don't think he saw a single game with fewer than 7 targets. He is such a player in that system. And the Sean McVay system, I think, allows him to make it can't be a fluke. It won't be a fluke, because even if it is a fluke, McVay's system allows the floor to be so damn high. Okay, and I think Puka is the alpha there. And most of the reports out of camp is, although Cooper Kupp is probably healthy going into the year, he's not the 22-year-old, 23-year-old, 24-year-old Cooper Kupp that we knew, right? It is Puka's receiving core now. They're both good picks. I like both of them, but I think Puka's legit at the wide receiver 8 spot. I got Wilson ahead of him, mostly because I just think Wilson is just like route for route one of the better separators in the entire NFL. And I ripped off this stat in one of the videos last week on the channel, that Aaron Rodgers has never had a wide receiver that has seen 140 or more targets from him and not finished as a top 4 fantasy wide receiver. Obviously, those are, younger Aaron Rodgers' years, but when that man locks onto somebody, that man locks onto somebody. And that's going to be Garrett Wilson. They got no competition for touches there. Then we move on to tier 4, and I'm going to be honest with you. Excuse my language, if you got kids in the car, lower the volume right now, but I don't know what the fuck to do with tier 4, okay? It is a group of, I think, 13 players. So I have Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver 9, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Olave, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, Drake London, Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Devonta Smith, Michael Pittman Jr., DK Metcalf, DJ Moore. I could make you both a bull and a bear case for every single player on this list. When I have like the 201, the 202, the 203 in an underdog draft, it is my worst nightmare, because I feel like I'm getting a player of similar skill set, upside, and value at the 210 or the 211 that I'm getting at the 201 or the 202. These guys are all really in a tier for me together. Marvin Harrison is probably the best wide receiver prospect we've seen in half a decade. Brandon Ayuk is coming off a breakout 1,300-yard season in a high floor offense. Like, obviously there are moves that could happen between now and the season. Ayuk getting moved, Devontae Adams getting moved, something like that could happen where, the rankings will shift up. But any of these guys as my wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, if you go with another guy earlier, I'd feel great about. Chris Olave has a new offensive coordinator that uses a ton more play action, so I think the deep shots could be more effective there in New Orleans. Devontae Adams, I guess he's a little bit tougher to make the case for, just because the quarterback situation is pretty shitty out there in Vegas. Nico Collins has so much target competition, but he was so good last year, and I think that is here to stay. Evans has, racked up 1,000 yards in 1,000 straight seasons. And while they got rid of their offense coordinator, their new offense coordinator is coming from the McVay tree, so I'm not necessarily too worried about how the offense is going to run. Plus, the Baker-Evans chemistry is out of this world. So, again, not too worried about it. Jalen Waddle, one of very few receivers to have 1,000 yards receiving in all 3 of his first 3 seasons. And he had 1,300-plus yards 2 years ago when he was able to stay healthy. So I trust the offense. I trust the system. I trust Cooper Kupp in the Rams system. So him at 17, I think, is a steal in the 3rd round as well. I don't think he's the wide receiver 1 there in LA. I don't think he'll finish that way, but I think he's so familiar with the system. I think the chemistry with McVay and Matt Stafford is also undeniable there. So he'll have a bunch of big games. Deebo Samuel, going back to the receiver Netflix documentary, that offense actually kind of runs through Deebo Samuel. So it's tough to invest into him because you never really know where you're getting the fantasy points from. But the offense he is like the heart and soul of that offense. He just gets it done every year. Devonta Smith, I talked about A.J. Brown. I like Kellen Moore coming in. I think they'll take more play action shots. I think they'll take more shots downfield. I just love the idea of this athletic offense being up-tempo and how they're going to shred defenses because of it. Michael Pittman coming off of a monster year, Anthony Richardson healthy, DK Metcalf going to be operating in a much more pass-heavy offense this year with the new coach and offensive coordinator coming from the University of Washington. DJ Moore coming off of a breakout year. He's at the bottom of this tier where I think a lot of people probably disagree with that. I've seen rankings where DJ Moore is all the way up at like wide receiver 12, 13. And again, it's one giant tier. DJ Moore was fantastic last year, but the target competition is very thorough there in Chicago. It is very thorough, okay? Talking textbook thorough. We got Keenan Allen, we got Rome Odunze, we got DJ Moore. It's just it's hard. I don't feel like super confident that DJ Moore is going to have 200 more or 4 touchdowns more than Keenan Allen's going to have. So I put him at the bottom of this tier. And we move into tier 5, where we have Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, George Pickens, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin. These are like the guys that I feel good about having as my wide receiver 2. Diggs, I think he's lost a little bit of a step, but the offense should move really smoothly. So I think he'll have another 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Won't be disappointed in it. Amari Cooper coming off of a monster year. He had huge games with Flacco, but really, if you look at his splits where it was either Watson or Joe Flacco playing, like he just put up good numbers throughout the entire season, and he's been a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in back-to-back years now. So I think you're getting him as a crazy discount. Christian Kirk was on pace for a career year before getting hurt last year. The chemistry between him and Trevor Lawrence is extremely evident to me, and they get rid of Calvin Ridley, who had 136 targets last year. Now, I know Evan Ingram broke out, but he really only did serious damage in fantasy once Christian Kirk was hurt. So that was when the splits went crazy. But prior to that, Evan Ingram was fine, but Christian Kirk was great, and I think he's going to be a PPR monster this year, and he is the guy that you want on the Jacksonville passing offense, fully healthy, back at camp, running the routes. George Pickens, the number 1 in Pittsburgh. There's obviously some fluctuation in what's going to happen in that offense. They're going to be wildly run heavy under Arthur Smith with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren and Cordarrelle Patterson. But Pickens feels like they got Van Jefferson reportedly their wide receiver 2. So Pickens is 23 years old right now, coming off of an 1,100-yard season. I get it. You want to call him boomer bust. You want to call him a little bit unrefined in his routes. He's a guy that just makes big plays, but he's not super consistent. I don't really give that much fuckery about consistency in fantasy football. I want to look back and I want to see that you put up big numbers at the end of the year, and I think that's a possibility for Pickens. I think I'll have a very high target share on the outside. T. Higgins, I guess he kind of is what he is at this point. Gives us 1,000 yards. He gives us 6 or 7 touchdowns. Keenan Allen, I think that's about what he's going to give us in Chicago. I think he could end up being like the safety blanket for Caleb Williams there, right? Like, of course, DJ Moore is probably a little bit more talented than Keenan, but Keenan's also coming off of his best career season at age 30, 31, however fucking old he is. So don't write it off that Keenan can't be great in the Chicago offense either. Terry McLaurin, if Jaden Daniels hits, I'm not a huge fan of Jaden Daniels this year in fantasy because hate Cliff Kingsbury, hate Dan Quinn, offensive line stinks. Jaden Daniels is going to be under pressure, running for his life the entire year, but if Jaden Daniels surprises and just plays really well, Terry McLaurin will obviously be the biggest beneficiary of that passing offense. So he deserves to be a top 30 guy. It kind of sucks. We're never going to see him like really play with an established QB unless Jaden Daniels breaks out pretty quickly, but Terry kind of goated. We'll move into this fat tier of tier 6. These are the last 10 wide receivers. Before we get into tier 6, just a reminder, if you want all of our rankings just at any point, all positions, half PPR, standard, PPR, super flex, QB tight ends too, that's available in the draft guide that goes live on August 1st. We have a discounted pre-order price right now until August 1st on bdge.co, discounted price until August 1st, or the least expensive way to get it is by going to sign up on Underdog Fantasy using code BDGE, okay? So if you go to underdogfantasy.com or just go download the app, we'll put the link in the description down below. It'll take you to iOS, App Store, whatever kind of phone you use. Deposit $10 or more using code BDGE. You'll get the draft guide absolutely free. They're going to hit you with a bunch of deposit bonuses depending on how much money you throw onto the platform. You will get a free square if you're a new user as well, which is like 0.5 passing yards that you can bet on for like Patrick Mahomes in week 1, free square. So a lot of free shit. Underdog Fantasy, promo code BDGE will get you the draft guide absolutely free. Get all of our rankings, get everything else that is involved in the draft guide, which you could also go see on bdge.co. Tier number 6, we've got wide receiver 30, Malik Nabers, Chris Godwin, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Deontay Johnson, and Christian Watson. That is 39, and I realized that I X'd somebody out. I don't know who to put at 40. I feel like it should probably be Rashee Rice, but we really have no idea what the suspension is going to be for him, if he's going to get one, how long it's going to be. I've heard anywhere from 2 games to 4 games to 8 games to next year it's going to happen. So we'll put Rashee Rice hesitantly at wide receiver 40, but I still think there are a lot of receivers underneath 40 that are super usable, good floors, high upside, whatever. But yeah, we got Malik. I love Malik. He's so talented. He's going to immediately be one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. The problem is that this passing offense just does not allow for any sort of upside, right? Daniel Jones has not thrown more than 15 touchdowns since his rookie year. He's never thrown for 3,300 passing yards. Like, Malik could see a 27% target share, which is absurd for a rookie, and still finish with like 1,000 yards and 5-6 touchdowns. So I think the ceiling does not match where most people are drafting him, especially in underdog drafts right now. Chris Godwin, supposedly going to move more in the slot this year, so people are high on him. I feel like this feels like one of those like reports you hear in the summer, guy lost weight, this running back's going to be used out wide more often, this tight end slim, like that feels like that kind of energy, but it would make sense. And when Chris Godwin's in the slot, he performs at a much higher level than when he's outside, and that's where he was last year. But Baker and Mike Evans have a phenomenal chemistry that I just feel like him and Chris Godwin did not have, so I'm a little bit hesitant there. Zay Flowers, also kind of hard to buy into this passing offense as like an upside play, just because Lamar doesn't really produce high-end fantasy wide receivers ever. Mark Andrews is going to be back, and he'll probably do the damn thing. Derrick Henry's going to be back there taking a lot of carries. So Zay, I think you kind of just like, you take your bets here, you take your bets there, you grab in 1 league or 2 leagues. And that's the best part about underdog fantasy is like when you're drafting on there, the leagues are like $3. So you can join 10 of them, right? And get, 2-3 shares of Zay Flowers, 2-3 shares of Tank Dell, which is the next guy up on this list. Tank Dell, amazingly talented as well. But if you're competing with Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins for targets, and now Joe Mixon's going to come in and command, 17 carries a game, it's going to be tough to hit your annual ceiling there, okay? So Tank Dell, I can't get on board with him as like a very high pick. Jaden Reed, kind of the same thing there. Christian Watson was hurt for a lot of the year, and still Jaden Reed played like 67% of the snaps there. They don't seem to be getting rid of Romeo Doubs anytime soon. I think Dontavian Wicks will continue to be a factor there, playing 40-50% of the snaps. So hard to see the ceiling, although I think Jaden Reed is probably the most talented wide receiver on that Green Bay Packers team. We have D-Hop, we have Calvin Ridley, the 2 Titans. Now, while this team will be a million times more pass-heavy, right? They bring in Brian Callahan over from Cincy. And last year, Tennessee ran, I believe, the 3rd fewest 3 wide receiver set plays. Brian Callahan in Cincinnati ran the 3rd most 3 wide receiver set plays. So there will be a huge change in philosophy. But one thing that can't really go understated is the fact that Brian Callahan, like I said with Arthur Smith bringing over Cordarrelle Patterson in yesterday's running back video, Brian Callahan from Cincinnati brought over Tyler Boyd. Okay, so he's going to be playing a high percentage of snaps as well and command some targets there. So it's hard to project a ceiling for either of those 2 guys in D-Hop and Calvin Ridley. D-Hop has the integrated chemistry already, playing a full year with Will Levis, but it's kind of anybody's guess as to how it plays out. JSN, the narrative is he'll finally jump Lockett. They have Ryan Grubb coming over from the University of Washington. They played 3 wide receiver sets at a very high rate and very successfully. So you'll imagine he'll install that offense in Seattle, which would mean JSN will be used far more effectively than his rookie season and far more voluminous, whatever the fucking word is, in his sophomore season. Deontay Johnson, for whatever reason, I'm having a very difficult time getting behind the positivity for Deontay Johnson out here in Carolina. Like, people really like him in Carolina. I liked him in Pittsburgh. I did. I get it. He's a good separator, but like, I don't know, man. He doesn't score touchdowns. This offense is not going to score touchdowns. Like, they also used a 1st-round pick on Xavier Leggett. They used a top 35 pick last year on Jonathan Mingo. Adam Thielen, while he'll probably get phased out, he did just have a 1,000-yard receiving year. That's all I can really say about Deontay Johnson, PPR guy, I guess, but like half PPR, I don't have much interest in him, which is why I have him down here at wide receiver 38. Christian Watson, yeah, I think him and Jordan Love could have hooked up a few more times last year. I think they were a few feet away from having a few more massive plays, and I think when he's healthy, they're going to keep him on the field, and they're going to be letting Love sling it down to Christian Watson, okay? So I like Jaden Reed more, but when Watson's healthy, he is going to be the primary outside wide receiver in this offense, and Jordan Love is obviously coming into his own. This is an offense that you want pieces of, and I'm fine investing another year of capital into Christian Watson just to see what comes of the man. All right, that'll be our top 40 wide receivers. As I said, Rashee Rice was number 40, depending on what the suspension comes down for him. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. As I said yesterday, we did the running back version of this video, which will be linked down below. We'll be doing a ton of videos like this going forward for the remainder of the offseason. If you just want to skip to the good stuff, to the juicy stuff, do yourselves a favor. Head over to bdge.co and pre-order the draft guide. Goes live August 1st. But again, the least expensive way to get your hands on it is going to Underdog Fantasy. $10 on there with code BDGE will get you the draft guide free. It'll get you deposit bonuses. It'll get you a free square on the app, which you will become addicted to wildly. All right? I love you. I'm out. Smooches.